The sun rose slowly over the small town of Willow Creek. Birds sang softly, and a gentle breeze moved through the streets. People were waking up, opening their shops, and preparing for the day. In this quiet town lived Mr. Thomas, an elderly man with silver hair and a calm face. He walked slowly, holding a wooden cane, but his eyes were sharp and kind. Everyone who passed him on the street knew him, and most greeted him with a smile or a nod. That morning, Mr. Thomas decided to go to the market. He'd like to buy fresh vegetables and fruit from the vendors he had known for years. As he walked, he remembered stories from the past. He thought about his son David, who had left the town many years ago to join the army. David had worked hard, and now he was a 4-star general. Mr. Thomas felt proud every time he remembered his son's achievements, but he kept his pride quiet. The market was busy. Children ran between the stalls, laughing and playing, while people argued lightly over prices. Mr. Thomas moved carefully, stopping to look at tomatoes, carrots, and apples. He greeted a few familiar vendors, exchanging small talk and kind words. Unseen by Mr. Thomas, a group of young men leaned against the corner of the market. They watched him closely, whispering to each other. They were not friendly men. They were troublemakers, looking for someone weak to scare. When they saw Mr. Thomas, they laughed quietly. "Old man, he looks slow. He will be easy," one of them said. Mr. Thomas did not notice them. He was focused on choosing the best vegetables. He picked a few ripe tomatoes and some green peppers, placing them carefully into his basket. He smiled at a child who ran past, holding a small puppy. The child waved, and Mr. Thomas waved back. For a moment, everything felt peaceful and normal. Then the young men stepped closer. They blocked his path, laughing and nudging each other. "Hey, old man, hurry up. Move faster," one of them said, shoving him lightly. Mr. Thomas stumbled, but did not fall. He held his cane firmly and tried to stay steady. "Why are you bothering me?" he asked, his voice calm but firm. The young men laughed louder. "Just having fun." "You look slow. You look weak," another said. They pushed him again, and this time he almost lost his balance. Mr. Thomas' hands shook, not from fear, but from age. He tried to step back, but the group surrounded him. Some people nearby saw what was happening, but no one came forward. Fear held them in place. Mr. Thomas looked around and took a deep breath. He did not panic. He had faced hard times before and had learned to remain calm. He tried to reason with the young men. "There is no need for this. Please, let me pass," he said gently. The young men ignored him. They pushed him harder, laughing at his slow steps. Mr. Thomas' cane slipped on the ground, and he fell with a soft thud. Pain ran through his arms and back, but he tried to stay quiet. He did not cry out. He only hoped someone would see what was happening. After a few moments, the group finally walked away, still laughing. Mr. Thomas slowly got up. He brushed the dust from his clothes and adjusted his cane. His body ached, but he did not let it show on his face. He looked around at the busy market, at people who pretended not to notice, and he felt a deep sadness. He continued his walk to the market, moving carefully. Each step was measured, and each breath was steady. He picked up the vegetables he had dropped and placed them gently back into his basket. People stared quietly, some with shame, some with curiosity, but no one spoke. When he returned home, Mr. Thomas sat in his favorite armchair. The morning sunlight filled the room, but he felt a cold weight in his chest. He thought of his son David and the protection he could have given if he were here. A small smile touched his lips. He knew David would worry, but also knew that David had strength and wisdom beyond any ordinary man. Mr. Thomas picked up his phone and dialed the number he had kept for emergencies. He pressed it slowly, steadying his hands. He took a deep breath and waited for the call to connect. When David answered, Mr. Thomas spoke calmly. telling him everything that had happened. David's voice was immediate and serious. "Father, stay calm." "I am coming," he said. Mr. Thomas felt a sense of relief. He knew his son's presence would change everything. David Thomas sat in his office far from Willow Creek. The walls were lined with maps and photographs from years of service. His uniform was crisp, his metal shining, and his mind sharp. When he listened to his father's voice earlier, he had felt a mix of anger and concern. David knew the town was small, quiet, and normally safe. He did not like that his father had been hurt. David picked up a notebook and began writing. He wrote down the names of the young men his father had described. He studied the streets of the town, noting the market, the narrow alleyways, and the quiet corners where trouble could hide. He needed information before he acted. Planning was always better than rushing. By midday, David had arranged for a flight to Willow Creek. He did not want to announce his arrival. The last thing he wanted was to draw attention before he understood the situation. He packed lightly, taking only what he needed. His mind was focused. This was not a mission in a war zone, but it required the same careful attention and discipline. Meanwhile, in Willow Creek, Mr. Thomas tried to continue his routine. He swept his porch, watered the flowers, and prepared lunch. His body still ached from the attack, but he moved slowly, controlling his pain. He did not want to worry anyone unnecessarily. His neighbors passed by and gave polite greetings. No one mentioned the attack, but their eyes showed curiosity and concern. Mr. Thomas thought of David constantly. He remembered stories from when David was a child, how he always stood firm, how he had a natural sense of fairness and courage. David had been a good son, strong and smart, but gentle at the same time. Mr. Thomas believed his son would know exactly what to do, but he still felt a deep worry for the people in his town. Late in the afternoon, David's plane landed near the town. He moved quickly from the airfield, his presence calm but commanding. He walked through the streets quietly, observing everything. The market looked the same as he had imagined, but the people seemed tense. Children ran past, but adults watched cautiously from doorways. David approached the market where the attack had occurred. He spoke with a few vendors, asking questions carefully. He listened more than he spoke. Every word, every detail was important. He learned that the attackers had left quickly, thinking no one would challenge them. David noted their route, their habits, and the way they laughed without concern. He found a small park where witnesses had seen the young men gathering. He watched silently from a distance, studying their movements. They seemed ordinary, careless, but David knew better. He had trained for situations like this his entire life. A small mistake could allow them to cause more harm, and he would not let that happen. By evening, David returned to his father's house. Mr. Thomas was in the kitchen, preparing a simple dinner. When David entered, his father looked up, and a smile touched his lips. "You are here," he said softly. "I am here, Father." "Everything will be fine," David replied. His voice was calm, but his eyes held a serious determination. "I have seen the situation. I understand what needs to be done." Mr. Thomas felt a sense of relief. Seeing his son in person, strong and steady, made the fear in his heart begin to fade. He knew David would not act recklessly. He would act with intelligence, courage, and respect. That evening, they sat together quietly. Mr. Thomas shared more details, and David asked careful questions. Every answer built a clearer picture of what had happened and what must happen next. The town did not yet know that a man with great power and wisdom was among them. The attackers were unaware that the situation was about to change. As the night grew darker, the lights of the town glowed softly. David and his father prepared for the next day. They would face the situation with careful planning. The young men who had caused pain had no idea that their actions were being observed by someone they could never understand. David looked out the window, his mind alert and ready. Willow Creek might have seemed peaceful, but he knew even small towns could hide danger. He would protect his father, restore respect, and ensure that fairness returned to the town. The next morning, Willow Creek woke to a soft golden light. The streets were quiet, except for the sound of birds and the occasional footsteps of early risers. Mr. Thomas sat by the window, sipping tea, while David prepared quietly. Today, he would observe the situation closely before taking any action. He wanted to understand everything before confronting anyone. David walked to the market slowly, blending in with the morning crowd. Vendors called out to customers, selling bread, fruits, and fresh flowers. Children laughed as they ran past, chasing each other. But David's sharp eyes noticed small details. He watched the streets, the alleyways, and the corners where people could hide. He noted who entered and left the market, how quickly they moved, and how they reacted to others. Across the street, the group of young men gathered as usual. They were careless, laughing loudly, and teasing each other. They did not notice David observing them. They did not know that the calm man watching from across the street was a powerful general with years of experience in planning and strategy. David studied them quietly. He watched how they interacted, how they moved, and how easily they were distracted. He noted their weaknesses without making a sound. Every action, every glance, every laugh told him something important. He knew he could handle them, but he needed the right moment. Acting too soon could allow them to cause trouble again. Meanwhile, Mr. Thomas walked carefully through the market. He greeted the vendors, picking up a few vegetables for breakfast. He noticed the young men standing in the corner, but he did not react. He trusted David to take care of the situation. He only hoped no one else would get hurt before it was resolved. David approached a vendor near the young men. "Good morning," he said softly. "Have you seen these boys cause trouble before?" The vendor looked worried. "Yes, sir," he admitted. "They sometimes bother people, mostly older citizens. They think no one will stop them. I am glad someone is watching them now." David nodded silently. He gave the vendor a reassuring smile and stepped back. He wanted to stay unnoticed for now. He continued observing, noting the route the young men usually took when leaving the market. He memorized the narrow streets, the empty lots, and the quiet corners where they liked to gather. As the morning passed, the young men became bolder. One of them nudged a smaller boy who was playing nearby. David's hand twitched slightly, ready to intervene, but he stayed calm. He knew patience was the strongest tool he had. If he acted too soon, they might scatter and avoid learning their lesson. Mr. Thomas watched from a distance. He felt proud and relieved seeing his son act so calmly and carefully. He knew David's presence alone was enough to change the energy of the town. People began to notice the man observing quietly, though they did not know who he was. Whispers traveled among the vendors and townspeople, a mix of curiosity and cautious respect. By midday, David had collected all the information he needed. He knew the young men's routines, their strengths, and their weaknesses. He also knew the areas of the town that were more dangerous for others. Now he was ready to move. He returned to his father's house to discuss the plan. "Father," David said calmly as he entered the kitchen, "I understand the situation completely. We have the knowledge we need. I will handle it carefully. No one will be hurt unnecessarily." Mr. Thomas smiled. "I trust you, David. You have always known the right way to act. Just make sure everyone learns the lesson, not just the troublemakers." David nodded. "That is my plan. Respect and fairness will return to this town. The young men will understand that their actions have consequences." The two of them sat quietly for a moment. Outside, the town continued its slow rhythm. But soon, the calm streets would face a change. The group that thought they were safe and untouchable would soon realize that they were being watched by someone far stronger, smarter, and wiser than they could imagine. David looked out the window one last time before preparing to act. He knew the moment of truth was near. Willow Creek would soon learn that courage, patience, and intelligence could restore peace in even the quietest towns. David Thomas walked through the streets of Willow Creek with quiet confidence. His steps were slow, steady, and deliberate. Today, he would confront the young men who had caused harm to his father. He did not need to hurry. He knew that a calm, clear presence would carry more power than shouting or anger. The market was busy as usual. Vendors sold fruits and vegetables. Children ran and played, and townspeople moved about their business. The group of young men stood near the corner, laughing loudly. They were careless, thinking no one could stop them. David walked toward them without any sign of fear or anger. As he approached, the laughter of the young men stopped. Something about the calm, strong figure moving toward them made them uneasy. David did not raise his voice. He simply looked at them, his eyes steady and serious. "Good morning," David said, his voice calm but firm. "I want to speak with you about your actions yesterday." The young men exchanged glances. One of them laughed nervously. "Who are you to tell us anything?" he said, trying to sound confident. David smiled slightly. "I am someone who values respect. I know what happened yesterday, and I know who was hurt. You need to understand that your actions have consequences." The young men shifted uncomfortably. They were used to scaring people, not facing someone who spoke with calm authority. David did not threaten them with anger or force. His presence alone created a sense of seriousness they could not ignore. "Sir," one of the young men said finally, "we did not mean any real harm. It was just for fun." David looked at him carefully. "Fun is only acceptable when it does not hurt others. You hurt my father yesterday. You frightened him. That is not fun. That is disrespect." The group fell silent. No one had spoken to them like this before. They were used to being ignored or laughed at. Now, a man they did not know was standing before them with quiet strength, and they could not shake it. David continued calmly. "I am giving you a chance to make things right. Apologize sincerely and learn from this mistake. If you do not, you will face consequences that will teach you a lesson you will not forget." The young men looked at each other. Their confidence was gone. They realized this was not an ordinary man. There was power in his calm, intelligence in his words, and a presence that made them feel small. After a long pause, one of the young men stepped forward. "Sir, we are sorry. We should not have pushed your father. We did not think about how wrong it was." David nodded. "Good. I accept your apology, but remember, respect is more important than fear. Learn to treat others with kindness and fairness." The young men nodded, their heads lowered. They understood that this was more than a warning. It was a lesson they would not forget. They left the market quietly, feeling the weight of their actions. Mr. Thomas watched from a distance, pride and relief in his eyes. His son had handled the situation perfectly. No shouting, no fighting, only calm authority and clear words. The town's peace was restored without unnecessary harm. David turned to his father and smiled. "It is done, Father. The lesson has been learned. The town is safe again." Mr. Thomas placed his hand on David's shoulder. "You have always known how to act wisely, David. I am proud of you." The townspeople watched quietly from a distance. They had seen a man handle a situation with strength and intelligence, and they felt inspired. Respect had returned to the town, and the quiet streets were peaceful once more. David and his father walked back home together. They did not speak much. Words were not necessary. The lesson had been taught, the wrong had been corrected, and the town's calm had returned. As the sun set, Willow Creek glowed softly in the evening light. The town was once again a place of safety and peace. And in the quiet streets, everyone understood that true strength did not come from anger or violence. It came from calm, intelligence, and the courage to do what was right. The morning after the confrontation, Willow Creek felt different. The sun rose gently over the town, but the streets were quieter than usual. People moved with care, and a new sense of respect filled the air. The young men who had caused trouble the day before were not laughing or joking. Instead, they walked slowly, thinking about what had happened. David Thomas and his father, Mr. Thomas, stepped outside for a walk. The market was open, and vendors arranged their stalls with fresh vegetables and fruits. Children played quietly, and neighbors exchanged polite greetings. Everyone seemed aware that something had changed. Respect had returned to the town, and fear was no longer a part of the daily routine. The group of young men approached slowly, their heads lowered. They stopped a few feet away from David and Mr. Thomas. One of them spoke first, his voice soft and serious. "Sir, we want to say again that we are truly sorry for what we did. We understand now how wrong it was to hurt your father." David nodded. "I accept your apology. The important thing is that you remember this lesson. Treat others with respect and think before you act. That is how you earn trust and live with honor in any community." The young men nodded, feeling a mixture of shame and relief. They had learned a lesson they would not forget. They promised themselves that they would change their behavior and act more responsibly in the future. Mr. Thomas watched quietly, feeling proud of his son. David had handled the situation without anger or violence. He had used calm, intelligence, and authority to teach a lesson. This was more powerful than any fight. The town had witnessed a different kind of strength, one that came from wisdom and fairness. Throughout the day, the people of Willow Creek noticed the difference. The young men moved carefully, helping neighbors and speaking politely. Vendors smiled as they passed by, and children waved without fear. The town had learned a subtle but important lesson. Courage and respect could change behavior without harming anyone. David spent the day walking through the streets, observing quietly. He noticed how people treated each other with more care. Neighbors helped one another, and children played safely. The town felt calmer and happier. Even small acts of kindness now seemed more important. In the afternoon, David returned home with his father. They sat on the porch, enjoying the warm sunlight. Mr. Thomas spoke first. "David, you have done more than protect me. You have reminded this town what respect and courage mean." David smiled quietly. "It was not just me, Father. The people here helped by observing and choosing to be careful. Everyone played a part in restoring peace." Mr. Thomas nodded. "That is true, but your presence made the difference. You taught a lesson that will stay with these young men for the rest of their lives." As evening came, the town seemed to breathe a little easier. Lights glowed softly in windows, and the streets were calm. People talked quietly about the events of the past days. They spoke of the calm man who had observed the troublemakers and taught them a lesson without fighting. They realized that wisdom and patience were stronger than anger. David and Mr. Thomas enjoyed a quiet dinner together. They talked about memories from the past and the lessons learned over time. Even in small towns, they agreed, courage and intelligence could make a difference. The town had seen it happen and now would remember it. Before going to bed, David looked out the window. The stars were bright above Willow Creek. He felt satisfied knowing that his father was safe. The town was peaceful, and respect had returned. He knew that the young men would carry the lesson with them, and the town would be a better place for it. Mr. Thomas joined him at the window. "You have always known how to act wisely, David. Today, you proved that true strength is calm, thoughtful, and fair." David nodded. "Thank you, Father." Today was about more than punishment. It was about teaching, about showing what courage and respect truly mean. As the night settled over Willow Creek, father and son sat quietly. The town had learned an important lesson, and the peace that returned was stronger than before. In the quiet streets, everyone knew that respect and wisdom were the greatest powers a person could have. The morning sun lit Willow Creek softly, painting the streets with golden light. The town was alive, but a gentle calm filled the air. People walked carefully, speaking kindly, and helping one another when they could. The events of the past days had left a mark, and everyone seemed to understand that respect and courage were more powerful than fear. David Thomas and his father, Mr. Thomas, walked slowly through the market. Vendors greeted them warmly, offering fresh bread and vegetables. Children waved as they passed by, their laughter now calm and unafraid. The young men who had caused trouble moved among the crowd quietly, heads lowered, remembering the lesson David had taught. David noticed small changes everywhere. Neighbors who had been indifferent before now helped one another. People offered chairs to the elderly and smiled at strangers. Even small acts of kindness had begun to grow. Willow Creek was no longer just a quiet town. It was becoming a community where respect mattered. The young men approached David and his father once more. They walked slowly, carefully. One of them spoke, his voice steady and honest. "Sir, we have changed how we act. We help people now, and we are careful not to harm anyone. Your lesson has stayed with us." David looked at them with approval. "That is good to hear. Respect is a skill, not just a word. Remember it in every action, every word, and every choice you make." The young men nodded and walked away. Their steps were confident now, but careful. They had learned that true strength came from thinking and understanding, not from pushing others or showing force. Mr. Thomas smiled at his son. "David, you have done more than teach a lesson. You have reminded this town of what it means to act with courage and fairness." David smiled quietly. "It is not just me, Father. People here have seen how simple actions can change the world around them. Everyone plays a role." As the day passed, townspeople continued to show respect and kindness. A mother helped a neighbor carry a heavy basket. A shopkeeper offered a free loaf of bread to a child. Even the young men who had caused trouble helped a child pick up a dropped toy. The small town was changing in ways that were visible and lasting. David walked with his father to the edge of the town. They looked out at the fields and hills beyond Willow Creek. The wind moved gently, carrying the scent of flowers and fresh grass. "Father," David said, "a town is only as strong as the people in it. Today, Willow Creek is stronger than ever because the people have chosen to act with care and respect." Mr. Thomas nodded. "I can see that. It is a good feeling to know that peace and respect have returned. You did not use anger or fear to teach. You used wisdom and patience. That is true strength." As evening approached, the market closed and the streets became quiet. People returned to their homes, feeling safe and proud of the way they treated one another. The town had learned an important lesson, and it would stay with them. David and his father sat on their porch, watching the sunset. The sky was painted with orange and pink, and the quiet town seemed to glow. David knew that his presence had changed the town, but he also knew that the people themselves were the true force behind the change. "David," Mr. Thomas said softly, "you have done more than I could have imagined. You have protected me, but you have also protected this town's spirit." David looked at his father and smiled. "The town protected me too, Father. The respect and care we see now are proof that people will rise to what is right when shown the way." The stars began to appear, twinkling above Willow Creek. Father and son sat quietly, feeling the calm and pride of the town. The young men who had once caused trouble now moved through the streets with understanding. and the town had learned that patience, wisdom, and courage could change behavior without violence. Willow Creek had become stronger, not through fear, but through respect. And as David looked around, he knew that the lesson he had taught would stay with the town for many years, making it a better place for everyone who lived there. The sun rose over Willow Creek, casting warm light across the quiet streets. The town had changed since the incident with the young men. People moved with care, spoke kindly, and helped each other whenever possible. The market was busy, but the air felt calm. It was as if a sense of respect had settled over the town, and everyone felt it. David Thomas walked with his father, Mr. Thomas, through the main street. Vendors greeted them with smiles and offered small gifts of fruits or bread as a sign of appreciation. Children ran and played, their laughter free and safe. Even the young men who had caused trouble now helped others, carrying baskets for neighbors or guiding children safely through the crowd. David watched quietly, feeling satisfied. His calm approach had worked. There had been no shouting, no fighting, yet the lesson had been learned. Respect and courage had spread quietly through Willow Creek. He realized that true change came not from fear, but from understanding and guidance. As they approached the park, a small group of townspeople had gathered. They had heard of David's presence and wanted to express their gratitude. An elderly shopkeeper spoke first. "Sir, we have seen the way you acted. You did not use anger or force, yet you have taught an important lesson. Thank you for showing us the right way." David nodded politely. "It is not only my work. The town itself has shown strength. People have chosen to act with care and fairness. That is why this lesson has lasted." A young mother stepped forward with her child. "We watched the young men yesterday, and today they are different. They help rather than harm. You have shown us that patience and calm words can make a difference. Thank you for protecting not just your father but all of us." Mr. Thomas smiled, proud of his son. "David, you have always known the right way to act. You have taught this town more than a lesson about behavior. You have reminded them of the value of respect, kindness, and courage." David nodded quietly. "It is not about me, Father. It is about the town, the people, and the choices they make every day. True strength comes from how we act, not how we command." Throughout the day, David observed the town further. He saw neighbors helping one another without being asked. Children played safely, and the young men who had caused trouble carried water for a small garden in the park. Everyone seemed aware that their actions mattered. The town had learned to act with responsibility and care. By evening, David and his father returned home. They walked slowly, enjoying the quiet streets and the soft glow of lanterns lighting the paths. Mr. Thomas spoke gently. "David, seeing this town change has reminded me that even small actions can have a great impact. You have given this town more than safety. You have given it wisdom." David smiled. "Yes, Father. Every choice matters. Every kind word, every helpful action, every act of respect builds a stronger community. The young men have learned this, and so has everyone else. The town is safer and better because of it." The night fell over Willow Creek, and the stars shone brightly above. Father and son sat on the porch, listening to the soft sounds of the town. They knew that respect had grown in ways that would last. The lesson had reached far beyond one moment of conflict. It had touched the hearts of everyone who lived there. Mr. Thomas looked at David with pride. "You have done more than protect me. You have inspired an entire town to act with courage, patience, and care. That is something no one can take away." David nodded. "The town has inspired me as well, Father. Their willingness to listen, learn, and change shows that even in quiet places, great strength exists. Willow Creek will be stronger for generations to come." As the night deepened, father and son sat quietly, feeling the calm and pride of the town. The young men who had once caused fear now carried lessons of respect and responsibility. Willow Creek had become a better place, not through anger or punishment, but through guidance, wisdom, and the quiet strength of one man who knew the value of patience and courage. The morning light spread over Willow Creek like a gentle blanket. The town had changed in ways that everyone could feel. Streets that had once been tense and quiet now held a soft energy of care and respect. People walked slowly, speaking kindly to one another and helping wherever they could. Willow Creek had become more than a town. It had become a community that looked out for each other. David Thomas walked alongside his father, Mr. Thomas. They moved slowly, observing the town they both loved. The market was busy, but the atmosphere was calm. Children played freely, and neighbors greeted each other with smiles. Even the young men who had caused trouble before now helped carry baskets for elderly citizens and guided children safely across the street. David watched quietly, proud of what had happened. His calm approach, patience, and clear words had taught a lesson without anger or punishment. Yet the true change came from the townspeople themselves. They had chosen to act with care and respect, and that choice made the town stronger. Mr. Thomas looked at his son, his eyes shining. David, seeing the town like this is more than I could have imagined. You protected me, but you also protected the heart of Willow Creek. David smiled softly. It was not only me, Father. The people here learned to act wisely. They chose respect and care, and that choice makes all the difference. As they walked through the park, the townspeople gathered around them. They wanted to thank David, though few knew exactly who he was. One woman spoke first. Sir, what you have done has changed us all. You showed that patience, calm words, and respect can solve problems better than anger. We will never forget this lesson. David nodded. The lesson is not only about punishment. It is about choices. Every act of kindness, every word of respect, and every careful action builds a stronger community. Remember that, and the town will continue to grow in goodness. The young men who had caused trouble approached. Their heads were lowered, but their eyes were steady. Sir, we want to say again that we have learned from you. We will continue to help others and act with care. We understand now what true strength is. David smiled. That is good. Strength comes from wisdom, courage, and respect. Use that knowledge every day, and you will never need to hurt anyone to feel powerful. The townspeople watched quietly, inspired by what they saw. They had witnessed a young man who had once caused fear now acting with responsibility, and they had seen the calm, patient guidance that changed a community. They realized that respect and courage were more powerful than force. Mr. Thomas placed his hand on David's shoulder. I am proud of you, David. Today you have protected more than your father. You have protected the spirit of this town. You have shown everyone that true strength lies in calmness, intelligence, and fairness. David looked at the streets of Willow Creek, feeling a quiet satisfaction. The town had learned an important lesson, and it would stay with them for years. Children would grow up seeing respect as a strength. Neighbors would help each other without hesitation. And the young men who had once caused trouble would act differently because they had learned the right way. As the sun began to set, father and son sat on the porch of their home, watching the warm light reflect across the town. The market was closing, children were returning home, and the streets were calm. Willow Creek had returned to its quiet rhythm, but it was stronger than before. Mr. Thomas smiled at David. You have done more than I could have imagined. This town is safer, kinder, and stronger because of you. David smiled back. It was a team effort, Father. The town itself chose to act with respect. That choice makes all the difference. The stars appeared above Willow Creek, shining bright and steady. Father and son sat quietly, feeling the peace and pride of a town united. Respect, courage, and wisdom had become part of Willow Creek, and the story of how one man had quietly guided change would be remembered for years. In the calm night, Willow Creek slept peacefully. The town had learned that true strength was not in force or anger, but in patience, care, and understanding. Father and son knew that the lesson had been learned and that the town would remain a place of respect and kindness for generations to come.